So let's talk about palm oil. Chances are you've heard of it, right? And usually it brings up this image of a huge fight, like it's people's livelihoods on one side and the health of the planet on the other. But what if it's not that simple? Is it really this black and white choice between helping people or saving a forest? Well, some new research suggests the real story is, well, it's a lot more complicated and honestly way more hopeful than just a good guys versus bad guys narrative. Okay, let's really get into this dilemma. So for a country like Indonesia, palm oil is an absolute economic lifeline. I mean, it drives exports, it helps pull communities out of poverty. And get this, small-scale farmers, we're talking about smallholders here, they produce more than a third of the entire national output. That's huge. But there's always a but, right? That progress comes at a massive environmental cost. Palm oil is one of the biggest reasons for deforestation in what's literally a global biodiversity hotspot. So to really understand what's going on, we've got to look past the big, flashy headlines. We need to zoom in on the people right at the heart of it all, the Indonesian smallholders themselves. For the longest time, the conventional wisdom here has been super blunt. It's been framed as this direct, you can't avoid it trade-off, a total zero-sum game. If you want more palm oil, you have to get less biodiversity. End of discussion. But what if that's not the whole picture? Seriously. What if that one basic assumption is the very thing that's holding us back from finding a solution that actually works for everyone? And this is where things get really interesting. Researchers have come up with this powerful new concept they're calling the hidden leak. And trust me, it's a totally different way of looking at this problem. It kind of flips that whole trade-off idea on its head. Okay, the key idea here is something called environmental inefficiency. Now, I know, it sounds a little technical, but hang with me. It's basically just a super frustrating lose-lose situation. Picture this. A farm is producing less palm oil than it could, and it's causing more damage to the environment than it needs to, all while using the exact same resources. Nobody's winning here. This is the perfect way to picture it. Think of a farm as a leaky bucket. The farmer's pouring in all their inputs, their labor, their money, their time, but a chunk of that potential just leaks right out onto the floor as lost income. And that spill, that's the unnecessary damage to the environment. It's a classic case where everyone loses. So you might be asking, how big of a leak are we talking about? Well, it's not a drip, it's massive. Researchers found that just by plugging these leaks, just by fixing these simple inefficiencies, these smallholders could potentially increase their palm oil output by a whopping 28%.
And wait for it. At the exact same time, they could cut biodiversity loss on their land by 22%. Now think about that. This isn't a trade-off anymore. This is a win-win. It's a simultaneous gain for both the farmer and the forest.
And let's be crystal clear about this. We're not talking about using more land or buying more fertilizer or clearing more forests. No, this huge potential gain comes just from plugging the leaks, just from improving the practices they're already using. It's about turning that lose-lose mess into a true win-win. Okay, so the million-dollar question is, what's actually causing these leaks in the first place? Well, the answer isn't some big, complicated mystery. Turns out it's all in the surprising details of how these farms are managed day to day. The research zeroes in on two main culprits, two really common farming practices that, surprisingly, are hurting both the farmer's bottom line and the local environment. What are they? Intensive manual weeding and intensive chemical weeding. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds totally backwards, right? Wouldn't clearing all the weeds be a good thing for the crop? But it turns out that when you overdo it with the weeding, you can actually damage the very ecosystem that the oil palms need to thrive. You end up harming the pollinators, and without those little guys, the trees can't even produce fruit. This whole thing leads us to a really fascinating question. If we want to understand why a farmer makes certain choices, we have to try to do something that sounds kind of weird. We have to put a price tag on nature. We need to figure out the real dollars and cents cost of conservation from their point of view. So using this economic tool called a shadow price, researchers came up with a number, and that number is $325. That's the average amount of income a farmer forgoes, that they give up, every single year, just to keep one extra plant species alive on their land. And to put that number in perspective for you, for the average farmer in the study, that $325 is about 15% of their entire annual income from palm oil. So you see, conservation isn't some abstract idea for them. It has a real, tangible, and pretty significant cost for these families. So if the problem has a price tag, well, maybe the solution does too, right? This brings us to this really powerful idea. What if we use an economic solution to fix what we've always thought of as an ecological problem? And the tool for that is called Payments for Ecosystem Services, or PES for short. The concept is actually really simple and kind of brilliant. It's an incentive program. You literally pay farmers to manage their land in a way that helps everybody out, like for instance by conserving biodiversity. And hey, this isn't just some pie-in-the-sky theory. The study actually ran a simulation. They asked, what if we just paid farmers to stop weeding altogether? To stop doing one of those inefficient things. The result? A potential biodiversity gain of over 3% and a palm oil gain of almost 2.5%. There it is again, that win-win. But this time it's triggered by a direct payment. It really all boils down to what the researchers themselves concluded. They said, identifying drivers of environmental inefficiency is key to successfully designing PES schemes. Or, to put it even more simply, you've got to know where the leaks are before you can pay someone to plug them. And that leaves us with one last pretty big thought to chew on. We often think about conservation as building fences, keeping people out to protect nature. But what if this research is telling us something different? What if the most powerful tool for conservation isn't a fence at all, but a paycheck?